Recording. Call the meeting to order. There's three of us: Beth, myself, Perry Stokes from Baker, and Mark Rose from Hermiston. So we're just reviewing our response to the survey, I think is our primary task today, and finalizing how we want to present or what direction we want to go with to the user council next week. Thanks for putting this into a spreadsheet, Beth. I was just doing some counts, and it looks like the median down here for...
Perry,
yeah.
would you be able to share your screen?
Oh, thank you. I thought I'd done that already. Share. Okay. Is that popping up now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I see it.
So, active card holders median is 25. The range, goes from 5 to 90. So or 100 actually. So can't get much bigger disparity of opinions there. Collection size median is 15. And that range is from 1 to, looks like 50. 85 is the highest.
I'm sure you noticed that some of our respondees did not follow the must add to 100
Oh, I didn't
mandate.
notice that. No.
So on some of them, it's pretty strange.
Let me see who can't do math. Oh, yeah. There's a 268.
Yeah, so I don't know what to do with that one. Part of me thinks, we just take the gist of the intent and the highest is what they prefer. But obviously, I don't know whether to ignore the results or just scale it down.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. Greater than 100. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 29 did not add up to 100. All right. So median on percentage of collection size was 15. Median on circulation, 25. And median on the minimum base was 25. So it looks like generally people kind of almost evenly divided it up. With a little bit of a reduced weight to the collection size. I think our percentage of respondents was pretty good. We got, some of them didn't identify themselves, so we don't know whether those are duplications or not. But we have 54 libraries and 29 replies, so that's just over 50%, which is pretty good. Should Queer be prorated? That was majority yes, and then 9 maybes and smallest percentage of no's. So I think we can make a good case if we want to pursue that. There's support for that.
Yeah, I think so too. Mark seems to be having audio issues. So just want to give you a heads
Oh,
up on that.
I see. He's yelling in the chat.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, Mark, we can't hear you. Might try, I guess, checking your connections, or if all else fails. Oh, there you are.
I
Can you hear me
heard you.
now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, this has really been weird because I know Perry and I talked right at the first, so I felt like we were good.
Well, I spoke, but I never did hear you.
You didn't?
I didn't. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Well, we're working now, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
So, did you have some comments about what you're seeing so far?
Well, I guess the one thing I wonder is, should we, it's a math exercise, I'm afraid, is all it becomes if we were to go through and correct the math so that they only have 100%. But so let's just go forward. I just, it's one of those things you can do, but I'm not sure it's worth doing.
Mm-hmm. So if we use the median, I don't think
Yeah, I don't think
that
it's a problem.
skews our responses.
Yeah, part of me was thinking as they're filling out this survey. I mean, in one sense, I'm glad they filled out the survey without seeing the results of the spreadsheets that you put together, Perry.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if it would have changed some people's perspective.
Yeah. Well, it did in Amy's case. I did get a response from her from Lake County, and her feedback.
Cheryl from Harney County asked for a copy of the spreadsheet that we were looking at in the meeting because she watched the recording.
Uh-huh. So Amy wanted to know what are Sage's overall budget goals? And I said, we might have some of those, like building capacity for a larger salary for our staff to make it more competitive with the IT professional market. Adding at least a part-time Sage cataloger. I had one other goal, but I can't remember that. But this piece really needs to be in place before we can even discuss that.
Yeah, it does.
And then is there a discussion about additional revenue generating or workload management strategies? So basically, if it's kind of an a la carte charging of members for customized or special work. And then number 3, I think this is mostly a suggestion to not drop the prices on those members that would have their prices dropped in the most likely scenario, and devote that money, raise it on the rest, but devote the money that we gain to some kind of Sage special fund, Sage enhancement fund, on which you get a vote on which enhancements are implemented for the year. There are different ideas about that. offer
So in other
records
words,
cleanup packages.
so in other words, our rates only go up then.
Rates only go up. Yeah. Offer cleanup packages, for example. We've been slowly implementing call numbers. So it's another way of kind of funding special work for members.
Yeah.
And I encouraged her to attend the user council meeting and present those ideas there. So, with that feedback from the survey, let's go back to our spreadsheet. Where's my slider bar? Okay. And so these option 8 and 9, I think, would be the closest approximation to what we got from the survey. And I don't know what days most of these responses came in, Beth. Did they come in pretty early, or did you get a bunch after I sent out my reminder on that last day?
It was pretty spread out. I can pull up the little bar chart that SurveyMonkey has, but I definitely got some more responses in after you sent emails out, but that wasn't the largest group. So I think it was pretty spread out.
I guess I should say that most people did have access to that survey, because I sent out Windows customized message to the library directors with a quote as an intention getter of what their rates could be and how they could change. I thought that would get some responses.
I thought it was effective.
Yeah, it is effective.
Yeah. So actually, I think probably most of the respondents could have looked at this to get their idea of what they should put in. And so these last two columns, one is what we already discussed with the active accounts, 30, 30, 15, and 25. And this option 9 I just put in there as a comparison to see if it would change much. This is based on the service population with the same percentage breakdown, just on using the service population instead of active cardholders. And there's some significant difference here. I guess you could look here at the DALs. With active cardholders, there's 19, and with the service population, it's down to 17, just about. And similarly, the other way, Umatilla, active accounts 1,800, with service population 3,200. So that, I think, is a big. I mean, we kind of have had our discussions, but this is a big question that can have some significant effects that I think we'll need to iron out with the help of the user council and maybe more general membership.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get a good attendance at the council meeting.
Yeah. Other than that, I think a starting point, since our current base rate is 400, this 15% starting rate is an increase of that base from 400 to 517. Not a huge increase, but the survey median was what, 25? If we raised it to 25, that bumps it all the way up to more than double, 861 for the base rate. I don't know if that's doable in the first year, but we might be able to work towards that. But I think we should probably keep it pretty low to start.
Yeah, I think the notion of hanging on to, or at least allowing a few years transition for some of those really small organizations that Beth has some concern over. I know. I don't think there's a good argument for doubling somebody's cost in a year.
Yeah. So what should our strategy be going into the user council meeting?
Did you? I'm sorry. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and I don't. Looking at the chart comes smaller on my monitor than it does. If it's actually on my monitor. But thank you. That helps. Okay. Yeah. So have you put the estimated percentages in, the 25, 15, or whatever it was? Is that what you've got there on one of the options?
I haven't put those in as we're in the median from the survey. Let me do
I would say, 15. When I look at those numbers down there, part of me says, let's show them first what their numbers show. Mm-hmm. So if we were to, other than maybe the base fee, I've got somebody looking to get in my building. Just a minute. I've got to see if I'll be right back.
Okay.
Perry, those median percentages didn't add up to 100, did they?
They didn't. They were 10% short.
Yeah. So do we just put 25 for all of them?
Is that all?
Maybe.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry.
The average showed that there was some, it indicates some greater preference for a higher weight on the cardholder population.
Right.
So we might we could show them. I mean, it's easy to show them both.
Right. I mean, I think if we start off with, we took your numbers, we took the median of those numbers, we rounded them to what we thought was appropriate, mm-hmm. and this is what it does, so that they can see that it's going to hit some, it's going to really help others, and then we say, in order to balance this out, we feel like the following formula is preferred. Does that make sense? Or do we want to start with, well, this is the formula we recommend, yours was a little, the average isn't necessarily always the best thing to do, and I don't know. Part of it is I'm trying to think of what makes a good presentation and argument, and frankly, it's numbers that skew everyone the least is what we're going to get the most support from, but generally you only get that when you show that some people get skewed a lot.
Right. Enterprise.
Contrast.
Yeah, I'm surprised Denine's not here to comment on.
It's probably because the early hour of the meeting.
Mm.
Because in any scenario, enterprise prices
is impacted.
So
and I am here. I just got here, but I am here.
Oh, great.
Okay. So I am concerned about your library with this new structure, because every one of these is a big hit for your library. And if we look at where those costs are generated, let's say under option, let's just go to 9. That's on the end. Enterprise.
Well, and I don't know if this is the worksheet that you sent out earlier, but I'm concerned about enterprise. But when I look at Joseph,
mm-hmm.
Joseph doesn't have any wiggle room. They just don't. And if it went up $1,000, they'd be done. So,
Okay. So maybe you have a big disparity at Enterprise on your interlibrary loan, and your courier fee is pretty high. So maybe what we just talked about in the CERC committee meeting, where you're running those poll reports more often, that's going to bring that down.
I'm running them 3 times a day now. We'll see what happens. It may. I'm afraid that our courier fee is expensive because we're isolated. And I mean, when our last courier bailed, it was difficult even to find someone to do it. And Beth would know better than I what we're paying. But I mean, that's an issue, but I don't know what you do about it. We are isolated.
Well, the way we've calculated this doesn't really depend on isolation. It's taking the number that you borrow as a percentage of the courier circulation as a whole, and then if there's a disparity between how much you borrow compared to how much you loan out, then there's a surcharge for that.
So there's not you're not talking about what it costs to actually have the physical courier.
Correct. So your percentage of borrowing as a portion of how much is the interlibrary traffic as a whole is 3%. So that 3% is times 3% of the 35,000 is what you're paying. And then the difference here of $1,300 is added onto that 3% chart of 35,000, and that's how we get to 2389.
So,
is there any other way to do that, Perry? I mean, all along we've tried to not penalize for resource sharing, and I get that we want people to be more even, but with small libraries and small collections, they're going to have to borrow more.
Well, and I send out my new stuff. I don't I'm sending out everything that I'm getting requested. So there's not much way for me to step that up. I am pulling more often, but after I thought about that, we pull on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so there never really was a 72-hour break when we weren't pulling, but we're going to do it way more and see what happens.
Can I tried to pose an idea earlier, and I realize that it doesn't necessarily come across as a fair process, but I think maybe another way it does, and that would be to never penalize or never charge somebody for interlibrary loan, but to credit people who are borrowers. In other words, if you borrow twice as much as you or if you lend outgoing twice as much as comes in, then you get a credit or something of that nature.
Well, that credit part is in here,
but there's also a debit for those that are.
Yeah. So
I think if there was a way for us to drop the debit, then that puts it easier for Enterprise and some of the other places, but it also means that we're all paying a little more for basic service.
Well, I'd be happy to look at other math proposals, but this was the fairest.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with your assessment on the fair. wonder if there's a way that we could do it. I thought I had something in my mind, and it's not. I can't spit it out clearly right now, other than to say that it would only be as a credit. I think that means there's a way you have to cost something back into the whole, or I don't know. Sorry, I can't be clear on that right now.
So Joseph, Joseph's would go up to 3,000. That's double. Of course, we're not going to implement this all in a one year. We're going to divide this increase up over 5 years to get to the target. But
well, and I feel like Joseph is. I mean, they're just on the edge.
mm-hmm.
They're having great problems, and not with the library, with their city. And I mean, every day I'm concerned that they're going to close that library, and something like that might just give them cause. So we have to be really careful approaching them. I believe that Enterprise is undercharged for the amount that we use SageCat. And I'm prepared to try to convince the powers that be that we need to pay more. If it goes really high, I don't know if I can pull that off. But I know that Joseph is going to, it's really going to be an issue. So the email that you sent out that talked about Enterprise, Perry, did you send that to all the libraries, or was that just something you sent to me when you were talking about doing the poll, the survey?
That I did a Windows mailer automatic customization so that everybody that I sent it to had their own numbers in that.
Okay, because I really expected to hear some wailing, and I haven't heard a thing, so.
Yeah, Joseph has a small population, pretty low.
And their general fund is pitiful, and the library struggles every year to get some of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure how we adjust this courier fee. We can adjust that rate to something like 50 cents for the surcharge or credit, and see how that works. That's another element that we can adjust the structure with. So instead of for every item that is a net borrowed, instead of paying $1 for that, you're paying 50 cents or whatever we set that at. And we'll still get to, that's still apportioned out so that we can get to the 35,000 that we need to recoup our courier costs. So that, whereas the Dells under $1 had a credit of, I think, over 1,000. And with 50 cents, they would be paying actually 812. So we could adjust that and start that way, or keep it. Let me go back to the summary. So I probably should create some side-by-side columns with that element changed using the 50 or using a different percent, and see how that changes people's rates so that they can see at a glance. But most people are looking at their own library. They're not looking at Sage as a whole.
I was trying to figure out when you Alrighty.
Yeah, I'm curious as to where that would put Joseph and Enterprise if we made that change.
Well, and I was trying to look at other libraries of like population and like circulation. The problem with Enterprise is our circulation is really high for our population, and so it's hard to compare because our circulation is up with bigger libraries, but our population is small, so it's difficult to compare and see.
Joseph, if we do 50 cents, still increases over $1,200. Enterprise still increases 3,000 to 2,600.
So, just to say, my book budget's $5,000. If my if my Sage costs are that much, it's going to be hard. But I know this has to be paid for. It's a great service. Just have to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Let's see what it looks like if we do a quarter. That doesn't change it much.
Yeah,
That does get the
I think
Dalles.
I could easily get us to 3,000 and then work from there. But that Joseph number is just scary.
Yeah.
And can we look at Wallowa too? I don't think it's going to affect Wallowa because they do such little anything. But I think we really have to pay close attention to the small libraries.
Wallowa sees a small increase.
And they have to expect that.
430 or 300. So
I mean, does it look that way for the other small libraries? I mean, let's see, Helix and what happens to those guys, the ones that are not going to have access to additional funds.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, an increase, but not arduous for Helix.
Yeah, no, that would be they could probably do that.
What about Union and North Powder?
Union over 1,000 on each scenario.
Yeah, I don't see how they can add that either.
And that's why this is so hard. Because we don't want to lose libraries, but I mean, we have to pay for the service.
North Powder really is about the same.
Yeah, theirs is insignificant. Perry, didn't you have a column where you took into account their operating budget or their?
Yeah, but we discarded that notion because it seemed as redundant to the size of the collection.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is for some libraries that might give them, we take that take the collection out of it and put the budget in and see what a difference that would make. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could add a column with that.
I'm just wondering for these really small libraries that have tight budgets and small budgets that whether we would see a significant change.
Probably, but I think there's a catch-22 in using budget as a calculation figure, because then if a municipality wants to pay less for their library, not based on use or demand, but just because they want to cut the budget, they're going to be charged less.
Yeah.
And And
But
there's also
they
no way
seldom know.
for the library agency to advocate for increased funding based on usage, because there's no tie to the fee based on use.
So the state library used to do that too, that you couldn't get your state library money if you had significant cuts in your budget. And I don't know how effective that is. I mean, honestly, in enterprise, they don't have a clue. And if they cut my budget, it would have nothing to do with Sage or how we were paying for it. It would be because they just didn't have any money, and that's where they whack, as the library.
Right.
So but I do agree, when you start looking at budget, it makes it sort of like subsidized housing. I don't know quite how I feel about that, but I also don't want to lose our little libraries, because frankly, they need Sage way more than the big libraries do, because they probably couldn't even afford a circulating system, or not one that was any good, let alone have access to all the interlibrary loans and the service that provides to their patrons. So they need it the most, they can afford it the least. So you're kind of in a pickle there.
Yeah. And I don't know what the answer to that in a fair allocation way is.
Well, have you heard back from anybody with that email that you sent out? Are any of them saying, oh, we absolutely can't do that? Or have you heard anything?
No. I got a feedback from Amy in the county, who was supportive of the structure, and had some questions about the strategic investment and strategic plans, and then also a la carte charging for special reports and customizations for individual libraries. That's not built into how we collect fees currently. But nobody wrote to say.
Overworrying it. I don't know, because I haven't heard a peep from Joseph Orwalawa.
Yeah.
So maybe they're set to handle it. I doubt it, but who knows?
Yeah. Well,
There's another element of this as well, unfortunately, and that is, I know, at least in Umatilla County, apparently one small community has approached the district on developing a library there, and at some point it's, how do you support that? I mean, you want that to happen. On the other hand, you look at it and say, are you ready for it? And how do you determine that? That's the other hard part on this one, because, I know we're not, I don't even know I know the name of the location, and I don't want to say it, but it's one of those things where, okay, it's a wide spot in the road and there's people there and they would like to have library service, but it is so small that will they be able to afford it? And it's not, I guess, part of it is it's not our decision, but it's also, how do we decide that? And the dollar entry is a factor in that. If there's not a dollar commitment, I don't know how you have a library.
well, if dropping the courier rate to a quarter per item, I think does help ease that pain a little bit. So we should probably start there. I can put a column together for budget instead of what was that replacing?
That's placing the collection size.
Instead of collection size, okay. And then we just present it to the council and see what direction they want to give. But I think this structure, I prefer service population base rather than active accounts. In enterprise, that really helps quite a bit. Doesn't really make a big difference in general.
So your preference is option 9 at this point.
Mine is, yeah.
And I would tend to agree, except for the hard situation at some of the libraries. But maybe we can mitigate that. I'm thinking that council meeting is next week, that we should probably send the spreadsheet out pretty soon so that folks get a chance to study it before the meeting next Tuesday.
Okay.
I don't think we should send them 9 options.
Yeah.
I think we'll confuse things way too much.
Just based on the survey feedback, we've narrowed it to option 8, 9, and 10, I guess, with the budget allocation, and have them choose between that.
And what are we saying? What are the significant differences between the 3 again?
So 8 is based on active accounts.
Okay.
9 is based on service population instead of active accounts.
Okay.
And 10 would use budget instead of a number of items in the system.
And which would it use, accounts or population?
Oh, yeah. I guess I'd have to do 2. Because that is
well, and that's okay, because I think if we do one, this is based on population and population in this, population in that, or you know, I think it gives it makes for a still quite a detailed decision to make, but I think it gives enough clarity, hopefully.
Perry, I think population is enough to, I don't think you need to
do the budget
option. I mean, budget option based on service population. So it's just another iteration of option 9.
So one of the obstacles of using the budget, and I'm not sure we can actually represent that accurately, because I don't have budget figures for the schools at all.
Oh, that's true.
I think that was another reason why we dropped it as a consideration, because we can pull every year we can pull the collection size or investment figures from the state report, but how do we get that from the schools? That could be a real challenge.
It is a real challenge, so I guess we're not going to be able to go that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll forego that, but I will create a couple of differences with changes to the percentages here. Going back down to show the 15% for base and kind of evening out the other percentages, just so they can see those in a ready to read format. Sound good?
I think so.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. And then I guess I'll also need to show how we were going to divide up the reductions or increases over a 5-year period, an example of that, so that people don't think they're going to have to pay, or don't think they're going to get $7,000 break this next year. We don't want anybody assuming that and making budget decisions on that. Spending money they don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I sense that we're close to the end here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am had an interesting experience with a conference call the other evening. I'd like to ask some questions of all of you if you have a minute or two once we're finished with this.
Do we want to end the recording since this will be not budget related, potentially?
I'm fine with that.
Yep. Okay, so I'll close the meeting for the budget committee.
Perry, would you please send me the link to this doc again so that I can get the updated one? Mine, the saved one I have seems to not go anywhere.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
So my question is this, and Enterprise, I'm